Tracy Miles was a 26-year-old with dreams that far exceeded the confines of her modest life. She worked tirelessly at Caddy's Diner, a rundown eatery tucked away in the heart of town. The peeling paint on the walls and the dimly flickering "open" sign outside reflected the challenges she faced daily, yet Tracy always wore a warm smile. Tracy had a special gift, not just for serving customers, but for making everyone she met feel valued and understood. Despite her long shifts and minimal earnings, she had a habit that made her unforgettable. After every shift, she would collect leftover food from the diner and hand it out to homeless individuals on her way home. To Tracy, it was a small gesture of compassion, but to those she helped, it was a lifeline. One bitterly cold night, rain poured relentlessly over the city, drenching the streets in an icy downpour. As Tracy hurried home, clutching her threadbare jacket against the wind, she spotted a small figure crouched beneath a bus stop shelter. It was a young boy, no older than 8, shivering in the storm with his clothes soaked through. Her heart ached at the sight. "Hey there," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" The boy looked up, his face pale and filled with fear. "I don't have anyone," he murmured. "I'm hungry." Without hesitation, Tracy took his hand and guided him back to the diner. Rain soaked them both, but she barely noticed. Once inside, she wrapped him in a warm blanket and served him a steaming bowl of soup. The boy's eyes lit up as he ate, and for the first time that evening, Tracy felt a warmth in her chest despite the cold weather. What Tracy didn't know was that her actions had caught the attention of an unlikely observer. Across the street, a sleek black car idled quietly, its engine humming in the rain. Inside sat Chris Kyle, a reclusive millionaire known for his sharp business instincts and guarded demeanor. Exhausted after a stressful day, he had been driving through the quiet streets to clear his mind. That's when he saw her. Initially, Chris was just curious. Why would a young woman be kneeling in the rain, comforting a homeless boy? But as he watched her lead the child to the diner and care for him, he felt something stir deep within, a sense of admiration he couldn't quite place. "Who is she?" Chris muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on the scene. For the first time in years, Chris felt a flicker of emotion that broke through his otherwise cold and calculated exterior. He jotted down the name of the diner before driving off, though the image of Tracy lingered long after he reached his penthouse. The following days were a whirlwind for Tracy. Between pulling double shifts at the diner and supporting her younger brother, whose school fees depended on her income, she barely had a moment to breathe. Yet, the memory of the boy's smile stayed with her, giving her the strength to carry on. Meanwhile, Chris found himself unable to stop thinking about the selfless waitress. Despite his wealth and privilege, he couldn't shake the image of her, drenched in the rain, offering warmth and kindness to someone who had nothing. It wasn't just the kindness in her actions that mesmerized him. It was the authenticity of her heart. Chris felt compelled to learn more about the woman who had left such an impression on him. One evening, he made up his mind. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that seemed out of place in the humble diner, Chris walked into Caddy's. The bell above the door chimed softly, catching Tracy's attention. She was balancing a tray of plates, her hair a bit frizzy from the humidity, yet her smile remained as bright as ever. Chris froze, momentarily struck by the familiarity of her face. Tracy greeted him with the same warmth she extended to every customer. "Welcome to Caddy's. You can sit anywhere you like," she said, her voice cheerful despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Chris opted for a corner booth, watching her closely as she worked. She treated each person with the same kindness he had witnessed that rainy night. She helped an elderly man count his change, offered a free coffee refill to a struggling mother, and even checked on a quiet regular. Every interaction confirmed what Chris had sensed. Tracy was truly exceptional. When his meal ended, Chris left the payment without saying a word. But as he left, he quietly slipped an envelope under his plate. Tracy didn't notice it until she came to clear the table. Inside was a generous stack of crisp bills, far more than a typical tip. Her hands shook as she counted the money, her mind racing with questions. She rushed outside, looking for the mysterious man, but he was already gone. The black car she'd seen earlier was nowhere to be found. That night, Tracy couldn't stop wondering, who was he, and why had he left such an extraordinary tip? The next morning, Caddy's buzzed with activity as Tracy tied on her apron, unaware that her life was about to change. Her thoughts briefly returned to the homeless boy she had helped days earlier, hoping he had found shelter. But her focus quickly shifted back to the customers arriving for breakfast. Around midday, the door swung open, and a tall, well-dressed man entered. His suit and polished shoes stood out sharply against the casual diners. Tracy was preoccupied with taking an elderly couple's order and didn't notice him at first. However, when the hostess approached her and whispered, "That gentleman over there asked for you specifically," Tracy glanced at him in surprise. She didn't recognize him right away, but as their eyes met, a strange sense of familiarity tugged at her. The man smiled warmly, his gaze lingering as though he were studying her. Tracy shrugged off the unsettling feeling and walked over to his table, notepad in hand. "Good afternoon," she said, her usual friendly tone in place. "What can I get you today?" The man paused, then replied, "I'll have the special of the day, but only if you promise to take a break and join me for coffee afterward." Tracy blinked, surprised by the request. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't usually take breaks during my shift. Is there anything else you'd like with your meal?" The man chuckled lightly. "Just the special for now," he said, handing her the menu. As Tracy walked away, she couldn't shake the sensation that something about the man was different, like he recognized her but was choosing not to reveal it. Throughout the meal, the man kept a close eye on Tracy, noting how she treated each customer with unwavering patience and kindness, even during the busiest, most stressful moments. She carried trays with practiced grace, greeted even the grumpiest diners with a smile, and ensured that everyone's needs were met. To him, it was clear that Tracy wasn't just hardworking, she was extraordinary. When Tracy returned with the bill, the man pulled out a credit card. But just as she was about to leave, he stopped her. "Wait," he said, catching her attention. "There's something I'd like to ask you." Tracy paused and tilted her head in curiosity. "Yes." The man leaned forward slightly. "Do you remember helping a homeless boy last week?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, I do," she replied. "How do you know about that?" Tracy asked, her voice filled with curiosity. The man smiled knowingly. "Let's just say I saw something that day. A young woman who went out of her way to help someone in need. I was impressed by your compassion." Tracy blushed, feeling slightly embarrassed. "It wasn't a big deal. He needed help, and I did what anyone should have done." "Not everyone would have," the man said earnestly. "Most people would have just walked by without a second thought." He handed her a folded piece of paper along with the bill. "This is for you," he said. "Open it once I've left." Tracy stared at the paper, puzzled but too polite to refuse. She watched as the man stood, gave her one last smile, and exited the restaurant. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she quickly unfolded the note. Inside was a check for $70,000. Beneath the amount, a handwritten message read, "Your kindness has inspired me. Use this to build the future you deserve. A grateful stranger." Tracy's heart raced as she clutched the check, her hands trembling. She rushed outside, hoping to find the man, but he was gone. Her mind raced with questions. Who was he? Why would he give her such an enormous gift? And why did he feel so familiar? That night, as she sat in her modest apartment, Tracy couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious man. She wanted to return the check. It felt far too generous for her to accept. But the note contained no contact information, and she had no way of reaching him. Days turned into weeks, and Tracy's life began to change. With the money, she paid off her debts and started saving for her dream of opening a small cafe where everyone, including the homeless, could enjoy a warm meal and a friendly smile. Yet, she couldn't stop wondering about the man who had given her the opportunity to change her life. One day, as Tracy was walking home from the restaurant, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and there he was, the kind stranger from the diner. "I was hoping to find you," he said with a smile. Tracy stopped, her heart racing. "You? Why did you give me that money? Who are you?" The man stepped out of the car, his face serious yet gentle. "I owe you an explanation," he replied. "My name is Samuel Hale, and I'm the CEO of Hale Enterprises." Tracy's eyes widened in disbelief. Hale Enterprises was one of the largest corporations in the country, and Samuel Hale was a well-known millionaire. "I didn't reveal who I was because I wanted to see your reaction," he continued. "I've built a fortune over the years, but I've never encountered someone as selfless as you. Helping that homeless boy wasn't just a kind act, it revealed who you really are." Tracy stood speechless, struggling to absorb everything. "But why would someone like you care about me? I'm just a waitress." Samuel smiled warmly. "You're so much more than that. You have a heart that money can't buy, and I believe the world needs more people like you." He handed her an envelope. "This is the deed to a small cafe Harbor District. It's yours now. Consider it an investment in someone who truly deserves it. Tears filled Tracy's eyes. She tried to refuse, but Samuel insisted. Just promise me one thing, he said. Keep being the person who inspired me. Keep helping others. From that moment on, Tracy's life changed. Her cafe became a sanctuary for those in need, just as she had always dreamed. Though she never fully understood why Samuel had come into her life, one thing was clear: kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change the world.